Concord. It's most likely the first town we are to discover as the sole survivor. It may not be as big and as populated as Lexington or downtown Boston, but it, just like the other cities, has stories to tell. An interesting one I recently discovered is that of the Concord Speakeasy. The first time you visit, a fight will be raging in the heart of the town, between Raiders and Preston Garvey. We learn, after saving Garvey and his group, that the Raiders were living here, in the town's buildings before we show up. After the battle ends, and while we're looting, we happen to notice a door. A door that is intact. It's not just another boarded up house, but a place called the Concord Speakeasy. Entering through the front door, we see a relatively large two-story interior. To our right, there is a small lounge with beer and cigars scattered around 3 skeletons, most likely pre-war. Heading just around the counter, we see another skeleton on the floor, and moving down the counter, we see junk like bowls and ashtrays, as well as an advanced lock safe at the end. Turning around, we step through a large hole in the wall, leading to a small room with an exit at the back. Not much here other than rubble and a few chairs. So going back to the main room, we see a doorway leading under the stairs. Venturing down, we find ourselves in a small, dirty basement, most likely the source of the beer we find throughout the building. Not much left over other than empty crates and a few pieces of scrap. Climbing back up, we realize we only have the upper floor left to discover. Passing a few paintings, we see 2 doors, one with an advanced lock. Heading in the other for now, we make our way in to find a nice bedroom, most likely for the owners to sleep in, or perhaps they rented this out to the patrons and their guests. Not much in here other than a Vault-Tec lunchbox under the bed. And to our left, we see doors heading back out to the Commonwealth. Looking across the room, we see a large hole in the wall that we can use to peek through. After unlocking the door, we find a smaller bedroom with the few items of furniture set up as a barricade, most likely to protect the skeleton that we find in the corner, still with his 10mm close. Now we have to assume from the locked door and the unlooted chest that this took place very shortly after the bombs dropped, most likely. Back into the hallway, we see the end has a collapsed roof section. With rubble on the ground, we can peer up into the ductwork and the pipes. We also see a blocked doorway just below it, and this is interesting because from the outside, the building we're trying to enter here doesn't have a second floor, and likely never did. We turn to see our final room, and entering, we see a peculiar sight. We see a man laying in bed with a mannequin next to him, and on the ground we see 2 uses of Excel, and underneath the bed we see a bloody knife. Now, I don't know exactly what we're supposed to assume happened here. Perhaps the man committed a terrible crime and was hiding the evidence and trying to drown his sorrows. Maybe we are to assume the mannequin did it. The room doesn't tell us much other than a few items of clothing and beer bottles. However, just behind us, we see a bathroom with a horrifying sight. 3 mannequins standing over a bathtub with a decapitated skeleton inside. We find the skull nearby in the toilet. Now, I haven't the slightest idea of how or why this happened. Perhaps the Raiders, who we assume to live nearby, have a sense of humor. Or maybe the mannequins really are evil. Anyway, after a quick sip, we turn to see a couple of hits of Day Tripper just behind us. Yet another rare drug left behind. Very odd for raiders. After taking our last look, we head to the larger of the 3 rooms for a second floor exit. We find ourselves on an incredibly small platform just off the side of the back street. After hopping down, we can turn around to see the buildings. As we can see, it looks a lot wider back here. We have 2 sections of building here, one with the lower exit that we saw in that small room, and one with the second level exit. Now, the Speakeasy is a very interesting location, and it's incredibly useful for scrap and for these rare chems early on in your game. As Concord is the first settlement that you're likely to find people in, I'm pretty sad I never stumbled into any of the 3 entrances before. I love finding neat little places like this, and it makes the 20th playthrough just as fun as the first. So that will conclude our look at the very confusing but very interesting location of the Concord Speakeasy. And so, if you like this video and like what I do, please leave a like, leave a comment, possibly suggesting future videos. I love reading them all. Subscribe for more Fallout 4 content, but most of all, thank you so much for being here with me today.